love, pain, truth.
The rain was hitting the window pane hard, making a rhythmic tapping sound that usually helped Clara sleep, but tonight it only made her nervous. She sat on the edge of her bed, hugging her knees to her chest, listening to the muffled voices coming from the kitchen downstairs. Her parents had been arguing with someone for over an hour. The voices weren't just angry. They were desperate. Clara was 22 years old. She had plans. She had been accepted into a nursing program in the city, and in just 2 months, she was supposed to move out and start her life. She had the brochures hidden under her bed and a savings jar filled with tips from her waitressing job. But the atmosphere in the house had shifted drastically over the last week. Her father, usually a cheerful and proud man, had stopped smiling. He smelled like cheap whiskey and fear. The kitchen door creaked open, and heavy footsteps walked up the stairs. Clara held her breath. Her bedroom door opened, and her father stepped in. He looked older than she remembered. His shoulders were slumped, and he wouldn't look her in the eye. Standing behind him was a stranger. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, but he looked incredibly tired. He wore a dark jacket that had seen better days. The cuffs were fraying, and there was a permanent stain near the collar. He had short, cropped hair and eyes that looked like they hadn't closed properly in days. He didn't look like a monster, but he didn't look like a guest either. "Clara," her father said, his voice cracking. "We need to talk." "This is Ethan." Clara stood up, her heart pounding. "Who is he?" "Dad, what is going on? You're scaring me." Her father walked over to the bed and sat down, putting his head in his hands. "I'm in trouble, Clara. Big trouble. The gambling, it got out of hand. I owe money to people who don't care about excuses. They are coming to take the house. They said they would hurt us if I don't pay by Friday." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "How much?" she whispered. "Too much," her father choked out. "I can't pay it. I sold everything I can. The car, the insurance. It's not enough." Clara looked at the stranger, Ethan. He was leaning against the doorframe, his face expressionless. "What does he have to do with this?" she asked, her voice rising. Ethan stepped forward. His voice was deep, raspy, like gravel crunching under tires. "I have money, Clara. Not a lot, but enough to cover your father's debt." "I know your father from the construction site. I heard about his trouble." Clara narrowed her eyes. "So you're a loan shark?" "No," Ethan said calmly. "I'm just a man who needs something. I have the cash to save your family's home, but I'm not giving it away for free." Her father looked up, tears streaming down his face. "He made an offer, Clara. It's the only way. He needs a wife. He needs a mother for his daughter." Clara stared at them, unable to process the words. "A wife? You want to sell me to pay your debts?" "It's not selling," Ethan interrupted, his voice hardening slightly. "I am a single father. My daughter Sophie is 5 years old. She has been very sick. Her immune system is weak. I work 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. I can't be there for her the way she needs. I need someone to take care of her, to cook and clean, to be there when she wakes up coughing in the middle of the night." Clara laughed bitterly. "So you want a nanny? Hire one." "I can't afford a nanny," Ethan said simply. "I can afford a wife. I pay the debts and you marry me. You move into my apartment. You take care of Sophie. In return, your family keeps their house and your father stays safe." Clara looked at her father, waiting for him to yell, to throw this man out, to tell him that his daughter was not a commodity to be traded. But her father just stared at the floor. "Please, Clara," he whispered. "They're going to break my legs. They might come after you. Please, he's a good man. He works hard." The room spun. Clara thought about her nursing acceptance letter. She thought about her friends, her freedom, her future. She looked at Ethan again. He wasn't looking at her with desire. He was looking at her with calculation. He needed a solution to a problem, and she was it. And beneath that, She saw a deep, haunting exhaustion. "You would be my wife," Ethan said quietly. "I wouldn't touch you if you didn't want me to. This is a business arrangement for me. I just need help." The next few days were a blur. The threats from the creditors became real, a brick thrown through the living room window, a dead cat on the porch. The fear in her mother's eyes was the final nail in the coffin. Clara couldn't let her parents get hurt. She realized with a heavy heart that her dreams of nursing school were evaporating. The life she planned was gone. They didn't have a big wedding. There were no white dresses, no flowers, no music. It was a Tuesday morning at the courthouse. Clara wore a simple blue skirt and a white blouse she had owned since high school. Ethan wore the same dark jacket she had seen him in the first night, though he had obviously tried to brush it clean. The judge read the vows quickly, bored by another routine marriage. Ethan slid a simple gold band onto her finger. It didn't sparkle. It was dull and heavy. When it was Clara's turn, her hand shook so much she almost dropped the ring. She slid it onto his finger, feeling the calluses on his skin. "You may kiss the bride," the judge mumbled, barely looking up. Ethan turned to her. He didn't grab her or pull her close. He just leaned in and pecked her cheek quickly, smelling like soap and sawdust. "Let's go," he muttered. The drive to Ethan's apartment was silent. He drove an old pickup truck that made a loud whining noise every time it accelerated. The suspension was shot, and Clara felt every bump in the road. She watched her childhood neighborhood disappear in the rearview mirror, replaced by the gray, industrial streets of the city. They pulled up to a brick building that looked like it had been abandoned years ago. The windows were small and grimy. The front door was missing a lock, and Ethan had to jiggle the key aggressively to get it open. They walked up 3 flights of stairs, because the elevator was broken. Clara carried her small suitcase, her breath short by the time they reached the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled like boiled cabbage and wet dog. "This is it," Ethan said, unlocking a heavy metal door. He didn't apologize for the state of it. He just pushed it open. Clara stepped inside and stopped. The apartment was small. It was essentially one room divided by a curtain. On one side was a mattress on the floor covered in blankets. On the other side was a small table and 2 chairs. The kitchen was a tiny corner with a mini fridge and a hot plate. The wallpaper was peeling in strips, revealing the gray concrete underneath. There were boxes everywhere. Papers, clothes, tools. It was cluttered and chaotic. "Dad?" A small voice whispered from behind the curtain. Ethan's face changed instantly. The hardness, the exhaustion, the stoicism, it all softened. He walked past Clara, pulling the curtain back. Sitting on the mattress was a little girl. She was tiny, pale as a sheet, with dark circles under her eyes. She had a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and a nebulizer machine next to her, humming softly. "I'm home, Sophie," Ethan said, his voice gentle. He knelt down and kissed her forehead. "I brought someone to meet you." Clara stepped forward, her resentment momentarily pushed aside by the sight of the child. Sophie looked up at her with wide, fearful eyes. She didn't look like a normal, energetic 5-year-old. She looked fragile, like a porcelain doll that might crack if you dropped her. "This is Clara," Ethan said. "She's going to stay with us. She's going to be my wife." Clara felt a lump in her throat. She wasn't just marrying a poor man. She was stepping into a life of sickness and poverty. She looked around the depressing room, at the peeling walls, at the tired man kneeling on the floor, and the sick child who looked at her with a mixture of hope and terror. Ethan stood up and looked at Clara. "I have to go back to the site for the night shift," he said. "There is food in the fridge for her. You know how to heat it up?" Clara nodded, unable to speak. "Good." He grabbed a harder hat from a hook near the door. "She takes her medicine at 7. Don't let her trick you into skipping it." Without another word, he walked out. The heavy metal door clicked shut, leaving Clara alone in the silence of the apartment, save for the hum of the nebulizer. She looked at her wedding ring, dull and unremarkable, and then at the little girl watching her from the mattress. The reality of her new life crashed down on her, heavy and suffocating. She was trapped here in the small gray box, forced to be a mother to a stranger's child. She sat down on one of the rickety chairs and put her head in her hands, letting the first of many tears fall. 3 months crawled by slowly, dragging the heels of their shoes through the thick dust of the apartment. At first, Clara counted the days, marking them off on a mental calendar, each tick a reminder of the life she had lost. She missed her quiet bedroom, the smell of her mother's baking, and the future she had planned. But as the weeks turned into months, the anger began to dull, replaced by a tired kind of acceptance. The routine was grueling. The radiator in the apartment clanged loudly every morning at 5, waking Clara up before the sun. She would slip out of bed, careful not to wake Sophie on the mattress on the floor, and start the day. The hot plate was slow, and the water from the sink always ran brown for the first minute. But she learned to work with it. She learned to make soups that stretched for 3 days and to patch holes in Sophie's clothes so they looked almost new. Sophie was the reason Clara stayed. It wasn't the deal with her father or the fear of the creditors anymore. It was the little girl. At first, Sophie had been shy, hiding behind her ragged teddy bear, watching Clara with wide, suspicious eyes. But Clara was gentle. She braided Sophie's hair before school. She sat up with her when the coughing got bad. And she read her stories until her own voice was hoarse, slowly. The silence in the apartment turned into something warmer. Sophie started calling her Clara instead of the lady. And eventually, she began to hold Clara's hand when they walked to the bus stop. Ethan, however, remained a mystery. He was like a ghost. He left before Clara woke up and came home long after Sophie was asleep. When he was there, he was exhausted. He would slump into the chair at the small table, his hands stained with grease and dirt, eating his food without really tasting it. He never complained, but he never talked much either. He just worked. One rainy afternoon, Clara was trying to organize the hallway closet. It was a disaster of old coats, toolboxes, and stacks of newspapers. She wanted to make space for Sophie's winter boots before the snow came. She pulled down a heavy cardboard box from the top shelf, intending to throw it away, but the bottom gave way. Contents spilled across the floor. It wasn't junk. Amongst the clutter, a heavy black velvet pouch fell out. It hit the linoleum with a heavy thud. Clara frowned and picked it up. She loosened the drawstring and dumped the contents into her palm. Her breath hitched in her throat. It was a watch. But it wasn't a cheap digital watch or something you'd buy at a department store. It was heavy, made of brushed gold and silver, with a face that looked like a compass. On the back, intricate engraving spelled out a name and a date. It looked incredibly expensive. Underneath the watch, there was a folded piece of high-quality paper. Clara unfolded it. It was a document, old and yellowed, written in a language she didn't understand, but at the bottom, there was a signature. Ethan Sterling Vance. Sterling Vamery in the back of her mind, but she couldn't place it. Why did a man who drove a broken truck and lived in a dump own a watch worth more than her parents' house? And why was he hiding documents? She put everything back exactly as she found it, her heart hammering against her ribs. That evening, when Ethan came home, she watched him closely. He looked as usual, tired, dirty, wearing a ripped flannel shirt. He grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and leaned against the counter, closing his eyes. "Ethan," Clara said, her voice sounding too loud in the quiet room. He opened one eye. "Yeah? I found something in the closet today," she said carefully. "A watch. A gold one." He stiffened. It was subtle, just a tightening of his shoulders, but she saw it. He pushed himself off the counter and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Old junk," he said flatly. "I forgot it was there." "It didn't look like junk," Clara pressed. "It looked like it belonged to a rich man. And the paper, who is Sterling Vance?" Ethan walked past her, heading toward the shower. "It belongs to a man I used to be, Clara. A man who died a long time ago. Don't dig around in things that don't concern you." His voice wasn't angry, but it was cold. Final. He shut the bathroom door, and Clara heard the lock click. She stood there in the kitchen, more confused than ever. If he was just a struggling construction worker, why be so secretive about an old watch? A few nights later, Clara woke up coughing. The air in the apartment was dry, and her throat felt like sandpaper. She padded softly to the kitchen to get a glass of water. As she passed the small window near the fire escape, she saw a glow of light. Ethan was sitting on the fire escape, even though it was freezing outside. He wasn't sleeping. He had a laptop on his knees. The screen was the only source of light in the dark alleyway. Clara didn't know he even owned a laptop. She thought he barely knew how to use a phone. She stepped closer, staying in the shadows, and listened through the cracked glass. "I don't care about the merger, Paul," Ethan was saying. He was speaking fast, but his voice was different. It wasn't the tired, rough voice she heard at dinner. It was sharp, commanding. "If the board votes to dissolve the shipping division in Berlin, I will liquidate every share I have left. You know I can do it." There was a pause. "Yes, I have the codes." "No, I am not coming back there. Tell my father he can sell the company to the sharks for all I care. I am where I need to be." Clara froze. Shipping division. Board. Liquidate shares. These weren't words a laborer used. Ethan wasn't talking about mixing cement or driving a truck. He was talking about millions of dollars. He spoke another language then fluent. Rapid-fire French before snapping the laptop shut. The fire escape went dark. Clara stood in the dark kitchen, her water glass forgotten. She felt like the floor had shifted beneath her. Who was this man? Why was he living in this poverty, pretending to be a nobody, while he controlled business empires from a fire escape? The question burned in her mind for the next week. She watched him leave in the morning, getting into his beat-up truck, and she wondered where he actually went. Was he really going to a construction site? Or was he going to some office tower, changing his clothes and putting on a mask? The answer came on a Saturday afternoon. Clara and Sophie were folding laundry on the living room floor. Sophie was feeling better that day, her cheeks flushed pink for the first time in months. They were laughing at a cartoon on the small fuzzy TV when a loud, distinctive noise echoed from the street below. It wasn't the rumble of a truck or the beep of a bus. It was the smooth purring engine of a luxury car. Clara stood up and walked to the window. Parked right in front of their building, blocking the entrance, was a sleek black sedan. It gleamed in the sunlight, completely out of place among the broken glass and graffiti of the street. It looked like a spaceship had landed in a junkyard. A man in a sharp gray suit stepped out of the car. He looked around, wrinkling his nose at the smell of the street, before checking a piece of paper in his hand and looking up at the building. He saw Clara watching him from the window. He didn't smile. Clara's heart raced. She ran to the door and pulled it open, listening. "Ethan!" The man shouted up the stairwell. His voice echoed off the concrete walls. "I know you're up there. We need to talk." Clara heard the door to the apartment open. Ethan stepped out into the hallway. He wasn't wearing his work clothes. He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, but he stood with his back straight, his shoulders back. He looked down the 3 flights of stairs at the man in the suit. "Go away, Thomas," Ethan said. His voice carried that same commanding tone Clara had heard on the fire escape. "Your mother is sick, Ethan," Thomas yelled back, his voice desperate. "The company is falling apart without you. The investors are panicking. You can't just hide down here in this filth. You have a responsibility." "I have a responsibility to my daughter," Ethan shot back. "I told you. I'm done." "They found us, Ethan," Thomas said, lowering his voice, but Clara still heard it. "The lawyers. They know where Sophie is. If you don't come back and sign the papers to protect the trust, they're going to take her from you. You can't fight them with minimum wage jobs." There was a long silence. Clara held her breath, her hand over her mouth. Ethan's voice changed. It dropped, heavy with fear and rage. "If they touch her, I will burn everything down. Every building, every bank account. I swear it, Thomas." "I know you will," Thomas said. "That's why you need to come back. Not for the money. For her. Ethan didn't answer. He stood on the landing, gripping the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Clara stepped back into the apartment and closed the door quietly. Sophie looked up at her, eyes wide. "Who is that, Clara?" Sophie asked softly. Clara looked at the little girl, then back at the door where the man who claimed to be a broke father was fighting off executives in expensive suits. "I don't know, Sophie," she whispered, sitting back down on the floor and pulling the little girl close. "But I think your daddy has a very big secret." It happened on a Tuesday night in the middle of November. The wind was howling outside, rattling the loose window pane in the living room. But inside, the apartment was warm. Clara was reading a book to Sophie, who was tucked under 3 blankets on the mattress. The little girl had been laughing at a funny character in the story just moments ago. But then, suddenly, Sophie stopped laughing. She let out a small wheezing gasp. Her eyes went wide, filled with a sudden, terrifying panic. Before Clara could react, Sophie's small body arched, her back lifting off the mattress as she struggled to pull air into her lungs. "Sophie?" Clara dropped the book, her voice trembling. She reached out and touched the girl's forehead. It was burning up. "Dad?" Sophie choked out, the word barely a whisper. Clara shouted for Ethan. He was in the bathroom, but he burst through the door in seconds, shirtless, drying his hands on a towel. When he saw Sophie, he froze. The color drained from his face. He moved to her side in a blur, dropping to his knees. He placed his ear to her chest, then looked at her lips, which were turning a scary shade of blue. "Grab her coat," Ethan commanded. His voice was sharp, cutting through Clara's panic. "We're going to the hospital. Now." They didn't wait for the bus. Ethan scooped Sophie up, holding her against his chest, and ran down the 3 flights of stairs. Clara followed, grabbing her keys and screaming for a neighbor to call an ambulance. But Ethan didn't wait. He ran out into the cold rain, clutching his daughter, and jumped into his old truck. The engine sputtered and died when he turned the key. Ethan cursed, a sound of pure desperation, and slammed his fist against the steering wheel. He tried again. The truck groaned but finally roared to life. They screeched away from the curb, leaving Clara behind on the sidewalk. She stood there for a split second, terrified, before realizing she had to move. She ran to the main road to try and catch a ride. At the local hospital, the emergency room was packed. It was a flu epidemic, and people were lining the hallways. When Ethan burst through the automatic doors, carrying a limp, unresponsive Sophie, the nurse at the desk tried to stop him to fill out paperwork. "Get out of my way," Ethan growled. It wasn't a request. It was a threat from a father pushed to the edge. "Sir, you have to wait. If she stops breathing, I will tear this place down," Ethan shouted, his voice echoing through the waiting room. Silence fell over the room. He pushed past the desk and shoved through a set of double doors into the treatment area. Clara arrived 10 minutes later, breathless and soaking wet. She found Ethan pacing in a small cubicle. A young doctor was examining Sophie, looking stressed. He shook his head at Ethan. "It's pneumonia," the doctor said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Her oxygen levels are critical. We don't have a pediatric ventilator available right now. One is in use, and the other is broken. I've called City General, but they don't have a bed open either. We need to transport her to the specialized center in the capital, but the ambulances are backed up for hours." Ethan grabbed the doctor by the front of his scrubs. "Hours? She doesn't have hours. Do whatever you have to do." "Sir, please," the doctor stammered. "We are doing our best." Ethan let go, his hands shaking. He looked at Sophie, then at Clara. For the first time, the struggling father mask cracked completely. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a cheap cell phone, but then he paused. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek, black smartphone that Clara had never seen before. He dialed a number. "This is Ethan," he said, his voice dropping an octave, sounding cold and authoritative. "I need the jet." At the private landing strip near the hospital,
Now. Not in 20 minutes. Now.
He listened for a second. And have Dr. Harrison meet us there. If he's not on the plane, tell the board I will fire him personally. Clara stared at him. Asterisk jet? Board?
The doctor stared at him too, mouth open, confused. Ethan hung up and turned to the doctor.
I'm taking her out of here. Sir, you can't. I'm not asking, Ethan said. You sign her out as Amia, against medical advice, or I will buy this hospital and demolish it tomorrow.
Within 20 minutes, the sound of rotary blades filled the air outside. A medical helicopter, painted not in hospital colors but in sleek gray and blue, landed on the street outside, blocking traffic. A team of paramedics in matching uniforms ran in,
carrying advanced equipment that Clara had only seen in movies. They loaded Sophie onto a stretcher and whisked her away. Ethan grabbed Clara's hand. His grip was iron. Come with me, he said. The flight to the capital was a blur of noise and fear.
But when they landed, everything changed. They weren't taken to a public waiting room. They were met by a team of specialists led by an older, distinguished man who called Ethan Mr. Vance.
Sophie was rushed into a private suite that looked more like a hotel room than a hospital.
There were flowers in the corner and machines that beeped softly. The doctors worked on her for an hour while Clara and Ethan sat on plush leather chairs in the hallway,
watching through a glass partition. Finally, the lead doctor came out. He took off his mask and smiled. She's stable.
The medication is working.
She's going to be fine.
Ethan let out a sound that was half sob, half sigh.
He buried his face in his hands, his whole body shaking with relief. Clara sat next to him, crying herself, placing a hand on his back. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. I have to tell you everything, he whispered. He explained it all then. He told her about the Vance family empire, shipping, logistics, billions of dollars. He told her about his father, a ruthless man who saw people as chess pieces. When Ethan's wife had died, his father had threatened to take custody of Sophie to use her as a pawn in a business merger. I had a choice, Ethan said, looking at Clara with intensity. I could stay and fight them with money and lawyers, and Sophie would grow up in a toxic battlefield. Or I could disappear.
I liquidated only what I needed to stay hidden, left the rest behind, and became a nobody. I chose poverty for her safety. He looked down at his dirty jeans and rough hands.
The truck, the apartment, the debt.
That was real. I needed to be someone nobody would look at twice. I was going to tell you, but I was afraid. If you knew who I was, you might have been in danger too.
Clara looked at him.
She saw the man who worked himself to the bone. The man who slept on a floor so his daughter could have the bed. The man who terrified a hospital staff just to save his child. He wasn't a billionaire in a suit. He was a father.
I'm not that Ethan Vance anymore, he said softly. But now that they found us, I have to go back.
I have to secure the trust fund so my father can never touch her again. I'll have to be the CEO. I'll have the money, the houses, the life I left behind.
He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. You're free, Clara. The debt is paid. You never have to go back to that apartment. I'll give you a divorce settlement. You can go to nursing school. You can have the life you dreamed of.
He said it without looking at her, his voice full of pain.
He was letting her go because he thought it was the right thing to do. Clara stood up and walked over to him. She thought about the rainy nights, the shared meals, the way he looked at Sophie. She thought about the fancy watch hidden in the closet and the broken-down truck. None of that mattered. The money didn't matter. The poverty didn't matter. She touched his arm, turning him around. You saved my family, she said quietly. You walked away from a kingdom because you loved your daughter. I did, Ethan said. And you work hard, Clara continued. You're kind. You're honest. Everything you did for love.
A man with that much money, most of them would have just paid a lawyer.
You became a struggling father just to hold her hand at night. She took a deep breath. I don't want the divorce, Ethan. I don't want the settlement. I fell in love with the man in the truck, not the prince in the tower. Ethan stared at her, his eyes searching hers for any sign of doubt. He saw none.
"I want to be Sophie's mother," Clara said. "And I want to be your wife."
For real, this time. Ethan let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. He pulled Clara into a hug, right there in the hallway of the expensive hospital. It wasn't a hug of obligation. It was tight and warm and full of hope. A week later, Sophie was discharged.
They didn't go back to the apartment with the peeling wallpaper.
Ethan took them to a beautiful house near the ocean. It had big windows and a garden where Sophie could play safely. It had more room than they could ever use, but Clara made sure they kept the little things. She brought the old rickety table from the apartment and put it in the sunny kitchen. She kept the cheap soup pot.
And every night, Ethan would come home sometimes late, sometimes tired from his new responsibilities at the company, and he would take off his expensive watch.
He would sit at that old table with Clara and Sophie eating simple soup, laughing as the sun went down. They had the money now, yes.
But they had something money couldn't buy. They had a family built on trust, not contracts.
And as Clara looked at Ethan helping Sophie with her homework, she knew she had found the life she truly wanted, right in the middle of a story she never expected to live.